Hello and welcome. My name is Martin Close, and this is the Classical Art Academy online art school. Hello everybody. Again, welcome to this evening's stream, live at 5. So if you watched last week, you'll notice that we actually did this little painting here. This is an underpainting, what we call an Impromentura. And for my students who are watching, you know all about Impromenturas and why we do them. But fundamentally, this tells me where to stick everything in a nutshell. It tells me what I can, rather than have to think about composition, it's all done for me here. And prior to this, we did some sketching with a little sketch in charcoal, which you can see now on this. And this is just a simple charcoal sketch. I don't think it's even, yeah, you can see it's live. It's quite charcoal-y still. So the beauty of the charcoal sketch is that it's just an idea. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be perfect drawing. It's just a bit of light and dark, and it helps you compose the painting and put your thoughts and ideas down on something first before committing to a paint. Now I'm going to put that at the top as a little guide for me. Well, I did last week anyway. And from that we did this Impromentura, this first layer underpainting. And this is what we're going to tackle today. Now, my objectives in today's stream is to put what I'd call a first layer on of oil. So this was a stain, and for those of you who missed last week, there was what we call an Impromentura stain, which is French ultramarine blue and raw umber mixed together. They're both transparent or semi-transparent. Raw umber is semi-transparent, and they give a transparent stain. If you wanted a more browny stain, like a traditional, if you go to the National Gallery or go to an old gallery, you'll see an underpainting done in a kind of a murky brown. That's just more burnt umber or raw sienna, again, you can also use. Here, I wanted to keep it blue-esque, so there's more ultramarine blue than there is raw umber. Simple as that. I'm not worried about color. It's totally dry, as you can tell. All I'm concerned with is shape and value. That's it. So the objectives really today are, like I said, I'm going to put a first layer on. I'm going to start with the sky. It's going to be diluted with a terps, so we'll get some of that out straight away, he says. Looking for the solvent. I shall be 2 seconds whilst I go and get some. Rachel, by the way, will be back at around about 6 o'clock. She's just dropping my granddaughter off. So, and Rachel, as all of you know, is my assistant with such things as messaging. So my messaging system is down currently. So Rachel will be back about 6, and then we can talk to each other. Until then, I shall do the talking for us, hopefully. So, objective-wise, I just want to get an idea of putting a first layer of oil on this. I don't want to go too detailed. Now, it's just really putting the colours on. I'm going to introducing colours to you on the palette now. Let's just have a quick look. We've got titanium white, Naples yellow light. Here we've got my usual cadmium yellow deep. And again, another usual one for me, which is alizarin crimson. Here we have ultramarine violet, which I like particularly when I mix it with the Naples yellow. They make interesting warm and cool greys, ideal for clouds in actual fact and skies. French ultramarine blue, another regular for me. This again particularly nice, especially if you're going to do a snow scene. I feel it's one of those like to have on the palettes, and that's indigo, and this is ivory black. I've got some premix colors. This is a premix warm, which I really like to use in clouds. It's quite a, as you can see by the color, it's quite a nice warm. It's effectively alizarin crimson, a bit of white and a bit of Naples yellow mixed up together. It's a soft color which I can then add other colors to branch out in all sorts of different directions. When it comes to clouds, I like to have a warm and also cool options, and this will introduce nicely into these two sets of greys. This is a cold grey, light, medium and dark, and a warm grey, light, medium and dark. This is something which I've pre-mixed as a cool blue-esque grey, more of a sort of a sky colour, I suppose you would say. And here it's just a bit of white and mixed up with this warm premix I've got here. So, and I want to sort of start with this. So we'll get the palette knife, which is here, and we'll just give it a quick clean. Let's get some tissue on there. There we go. Right. Now all I want to do first off is to mix a warm highlight. Shadows I want to be cool, highlights I want to be warm. It's where the sun's hitting. Time of day on this I feel is just before sundown. The sun's maybe just sizzling in the distant horizon, probably over here because there's shadows at this end, as you can see by Snowy, our snowman over there. So we add a little bit of this colour to the titanium, and I'll mix that in. I'll probably mix a bit more than that in actual fact, because let's take that rest of that stream. You'll notice I don't have any more, but I did have two stripes or of titanium white here. The reason I put it in a sort of a long length as opposed to a dollop is because I can pick at any point fresh white from this, and it's a very good tip. So it's quite interesting. I don't have any idea who's watching until Rachel returns at 6. It's I find it's a great asset having Rachel here when I'm doing the streams, because it does mean you can talk directly, and I don't get distracted, which is quite easy for me to do, as you know, anybody who knows me. Right, here we go. So that's light but not white, and that's I've put here, and that'll form my highlights for in here. I want to keep those warm. Let's clean the palette knife off and put that down. Now the sky, as you can see, I've got quite a large amount of darks in this area, and that's because the top of this tree I want to have quite a strong highlight. So I think we're going to start with the sky. I want to create a very atmospheric, misty, foggy, not quite sure what's in the distance type of sky, because that's going to bring everything here really forward, and I hope to achieve quite a bit of depth. So we're going to keep everything, you could say, loose, but certainly without any form of detail. And I don't want to see any detail on this painting until I get into here and the near foreground. That's the only part of the detail I want to see. So for today, it's just mapping out in colour for the first time. So let's get this on the go. I'm going to use a bit of solvent for this, and let's start with the darkest dark over here. So I mentioned earlier about this ultramarine violet. You can see it's blue-esque. I don't know if you can see that. You probably just see it slightly purpley or a violet, more violet than the French ultramarine blue. And to that, I want to add some Naples yellow, and as soon as I do that, you can see the Naples yellow and the violet, purple and yellow, go to neutral, and this creates a very interesting grey cloud sort of colour. The more Naples yellow I add, the warmer obviously it gets. So we'll make a little string here. Now, how dark to go? I kind of feel I really want to go quite dark in this zone, because the sun is over here, so that's almost the night sky. And I'm not too sure about, I've got some clouds hinting off into the drawing. I'm not too sure if we're going to have those or not. So to this, I'm going to add a little bit of indigo. Now, again, this could be too strong a colour. Let's mix that in with the violet. Let's wipe the brush off. I'm mixing with a brush because I just want to kind of feel the colour that I'm looking for here. Normally if I want to make something go darker, I use black. And I'm going to use black now because I feel this is too higher chroma. So too much colour. So let's just take that down a shade. And then I can add more colour into that should I need. That violet, that yellow. Let's take it a little bit grey. I want to take this softer now. Tiniest bit of light and it just goes. Let's see what that looks like. Bit of solvent. We're using terp still because this is first layer of oil paint going on. And we'll see what that looks like. Okay, I kind of feel I want to make it go darker, so again indigo for the colour. And this is one of those feel your way through moments. Any questions, please? Like I said, Rachel will be with us at about 6 o'clock, and I'll be able to discuss any questions you have. So, and she'll catch up on the stream of questions, I'm sure, when she does arrive. So we'll go through those at 6 when she arrives. Just put this in a bit more. Getting a sheen from the lights. Okay. See how that looks like. I might change that. Maybe not. I'm looking over at the screen to give me a slightly better idea, but we'll see how it goes. So when you're putting this on, I'm going to put on quite light. Notice the technique. It's like crosses, horizontal strokes, downward strokes. Don't do all in one direction. It's not a good technique. Mess it up a bit and work that down. I'm going to try to keep the underpainting, the Impromentura still with us, so I'm going to work gingerly around these foreground areas. Okay, I think that's reasonable. We'll see. It's at this stage I'm going to keep it quite loose. I don't want to go too committed. Pushing this in a little bit. The other nice thing about this is that if you're a newbie to oils or you're learning, it's not about committing too early. You can put a bit of soft colour on. When I mean soft, I mean don't put a big thick dollop on, because if it's the wrong colour or wrong place, well, you then got a major surgery to try to move it around, alter it, or even then wipe it off. So at this stage I just want to keep that slightly non-committal. Now as I'm bringing it over here, let's just make a bit more of this up. And I'm not too worried about mixing a big dollop, because this is going to totally be lots of different colours. So I don't need to worry about, it's not like I'm going to block it in all one colour. So we don't need to worry about mixing large dollops of colour up. So a bit more purple. I'm going to go a little bit more of that. We'll go a little bit of indigo in there too. just to make it go darker. Let's see what we come up with. I think I might switch and use the palette knife. Hope all of you are well, and you'll notice I've done a little bit of name changing on the streamed recordings. Hopefully make it a bit more interesting on the stream, or at least the name is. They call it Google friendly. Let's bring this down. Yep, I think we're there with that. I'm going to add a little bit more solvent to it. The solvent will make it dry quick. I'm going to rub this across. Now I'm keeping the dark at the top. And I'm not going to go all the way down to the trees with this. I'm just going to work it through and see where we are with stuff. I'm going to push it down in here, I think, though. We have this tree line coming along here, and I'm a little mindful it might be a bit too high, so but we'll push that down. Just scrubbing it away at this stage. Remind the objectives for today are to cover the canvas in oils, in paint, but making it so we can make changes if we need to without really any distress. Bringing this down slightly now. Notice I'm not over here yet, so I probably should be a bit over there maybe. But I think this needs to go lighter, so we'll cover that in a second. I think I just want to push this down. Probably should have mixed a little bit more paint up, but never mind. So a cup of tea, lemon and ginger. Hope everything's working. Rachel's my tech assistant when it comes to streaming. First on the ball to tell me if something's not working, so. Okay, that's pushing that down. I think we've got quite a nice colour there. Seems about right. I think until we get the other colours on, I might well lighten or darken some of this area, but we'll see. We'll see. Let's introduce now this slightly lighter side and see where we come to. Introduce all of these pigments into it. See what we get. So what happens? Let's have a look at that and see what we are with that one. Yeah, that's definitely a bit lighter, but I think it's okay. So let's put a bit more of that sort of colour in. So let's put it to one side. Now when you're mixing colour and you've got some that's quite thin, it's got a lot of solvent on it. Let's spread it out so we can see it. And again, let's analyse where we go with this. We know we've got some purples in there, so we can pop a bit of purple in. There's definitely Naples yellow. I think we might need a bit more Naples yellow in, so let's skirt a bit of that with all the colours here. I've got cadmium yellow deep on there, but this is such a subtle colour mix. I'm not sure if I need it or not, but it's there. It's always nice to have something like that on the palette. You can see this is slightly too purple. Has a little light, so indigo goes in. That's going to make it quite a bit dark. Never mind. Sauce for the goose, as I say. And if we were to analyze that, even on the screen, you should be able to see that's a bit dark. So again, we got choices. I think if I added a little bit more Naples, might not be that much. And we need a little tad of blue, I think, in there, just to kick it into the blue side. And then we'll add some light. Now, the reason I've got these greys here is exactly for this reason. If I added white, let's add some white. It's a very strong change. Can you see that? So it's a bit like using something which is really concentrated. And we can use this, and we can bend it round. Now instantly I can see the difference there. It needs a bit warming up. We could use the alizarin. Again, it's a tube colour, it's very strong. It's bending it a little bit nearer. It's actually a little bit, I think there's a bit more Naples yellow in that. And a little bit more. We could use this actually. Bit of warmth. Tiny bit more Naples. I'm showing you this so that you can see you can actually bend the colours around within reason. Obviously, if you start with a green, you're not going to end up with a good red. I think that's reasonable for this, and it's going to change anyway. So the other way of doing that is simply just to go into a grey. So this is too light. This is probably the nearest grey. And if we added that to the colour, we're going to get there a lot quicker. It means that we're not diving into a very different colour. We're not diving into titanium white to make it lighter. I can see from this, value-wise, it's similar. It's too blue, so therefore a little bit of orange would take that and bend it round. But another way of looking at it is if we added a little bit of the alizarin crimson and a little bit of the Naples yellow light, also yellow and red will make a warm, and then that added together as a combination would shift it across nearer to the objective colour. A little bit more, it's gone a bit light, so a little bit more red I think on that. And again, colour theory being what it is, good to have in your pocket. We added some more red. Oh, that's a lot of red. Added a bit of the indigo, which is a greeny blue, black. It will kill the red effectively, or reduce the impact of the red. And you can see now we've got a darker grey pushing that down. So all of these tricks are to give you extra flexibility when you're mixing colour. I'm going to add a little bit more warmth to that because I can see it's a little bit anemic still on the warmth side. Okay, now I think we're about there. Let's have a thought. I'm going to actually push in, this is going to be okay I think for the top end, so let's put those together. So you can see I came about that colour in two different, slightly different directions that time. So don't be too nervous about playing with colour. What I would say is if it's going in totally the wrong direction, cut the pile of colour in half into two segments and make changes to one half of the colour you've mixed and just test it out. If it works, great, you can add the other half to it and you know what you're doing. Otherwise you'll end up with 1.5 litres of paint on the palette and it probably won't look too good. So let's just now put this in. Now again, not too much paint, just a bit of solvent in there, bringing this down. there's going to be all sorts of mists and stuff, and it's not going to be a crisp colour shift. It's going to be patches of different colours in the sky. So it's okay to have the colour slight variation going from one to the other. Now I'm going to add a bit of this. This is just a feeling. We'll see. I'm going to add this to this colour, and immediately you can see, not only has it lightened it slightly, but it has, obviously it's warmed it up. And I'm going to add some Naples yellow to this mix as well. A bit more of the juice, just a little bit. I don't want to go too runny. And I'm going to put a bit of this in. Notice I'm not too respectful about where I stick it. Doesn't really matter, as long as it's in that area I'm fine. And again, a bit more of the warmth as we come down. Quick peek, yep. It's a fairly mucky colour coming down here. And just popping that onto the effectively the horizon of this painting. It's given us a slight difference. Again, pushing this down, going into the trees slightly. I wasn't too sure about how tall to make those. I can always make them grow a bit, but I didn't want to commit to having too big a tree. Let's have a quick look. Yes, I think that's working quite nicely. When you're doing a painting like this, where we're not using a photograph, this is kind of out of our heads or hearts, then it's nice to explore, and you don't have to you don't worry about whatever you do, because at the end of the day it's fun. It's your world, wiggle it around a place. I would like to say, and I think I mentioned this last week also, is if you do want to do something just as an experiment, these little canvas sizes are ideal. What are they? They are 7 by 5 inch. You can gesso them. So if you paint over something, it hasn't worked, put a load of gesso on, rub it down, maybe a bit of sandpaper, a couple of coats of gesso. You then have a fresh canvas which you can then just explore some things on. I mean, there's an Impromentura of a pair, a couple of pairs, alla prima. You can develop something like this. Of course, they're small paintings. You're not, again, committing to a large amount of money. Impromentura of a seascape, showing a few waves. And again, if you want to explore what that looks like or something similar, you can then go to a colour. If it works at that level, you've got your colours, you've experimented with colour. And you can either say, well, this is too blue or too grey, or you can then make a bigger painting. And it doesn't cost you a huge amount of money. So do think of just letting go. Like I'm doing here in many aspects, I'm not really that fussed with regards to colour or the painting. I'm just having a bit of fun and exploring. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, no worries. There's no loss. You're learning, and every time you put paint to a canvas, you're learning more and more. It's really not about. I really strongly believe this. I don't think it's about making a painting in these early years of learning how to paint. It's about learning how to do a painting, and we only learn something, as I keep saying to our students, when you mess it up. So don't get frustrated if it goes terribly wrong. Rejoice in it. Go, yes, I've learned something. I've learned how not to do it. But don't get terribly frustrated with your failures, because your failures are actually you succeeding in learning. I also, some of you might have, I think, noticed there's guitars in the background. I enjoy playing the guitar. I don't learn anything if I play the same tune every day, every month, every year. I only learn something when I try something new, and trust me, it's not a pretty experience to witness. So, you know, don't be too worried. As I'm trying to say, just let go. Now you can see I'm putting some colour in here. Now it might or might not be the right colour, but it's a colour which will stick in initially. It's a sort of slightly lighter variant of the sky, and it's where those trees were. Actually, they look better trees now than they did before. There you go. Let's just soften that in a bit. Don't worry too much about these brush marks showing. People buy original paintings because they can see the brush marks. Otherwise, why bother? They'll buy a photograph. So popping those in. Let's have a quick look on this. I think we've pretty much done a first on the sky. Not too heavy, not too thick. Everything's kind of loose. I'll go slightly down on this horizon area. Now, that is going to change in a second anyway, I feel. So we won't go, because you see these trees are kind of in limbo. I kind of feel there's another story behind there. There's something else which we haven't put in. I'm liking this. It's nice. It already looks like a finished painting. Maybe we should just leave it there, go home. Let's keep on. Oh, tea. Right. So let's bring this down now. Next in line are these distant trees. So let's have a think about what colour we should do those. They should hardly be noticed. So initially they kind of should be there, but maybe shouldn't be too obvious. So what do we do if we just put a few shapes in? See what that looks like. I don't want to go too twee on the tree, if you know what I mean. Again, I really don't want detail in at this stage, and these have got to look like they're distant trees, not on the doorstep. There's a lot of atmospherics going on. I'm going to bring a horizontal stroke down, and just to cut those off so we don't make them too high. And also we don't want to clean off. They need to be messy trees. We live in a very tidy world. Everything, picket line fence is not what I'm looking for in a tree. So I don't want too organised, is what I'm trying to say. Just bash that up again. Good, okay, so we got kind of something going on there. It's not very defined, and that's kind of nice. So at this point, let's push this across here again, so a bit of this lighter colour, and put it in between these trees. I'm just wiggling it up and down. Again, we don't go up here Kilimanjaros, because at the end of the day you don't want to go too high. If you want a mountain, then fine, but if you don't, then don't put one in. That's what I say. What's that look like? Yeah, okay, so again, cutting that off. I'm just using one brush currently as well, so mainly because it's all ish, one colour group. Yeah, I'll fiddle with that in a second, and we'll improve on that. It's a little bit too marky for my liking, but never mind, we'll come back to that in a second. Okay, so let's now just think about these trees. It's like some of them will be in shadow, so we could do with going slightly darker. if I went with the indigo into this, I kind of feel that's almost too higher chroma. Let's just knock it back with a bit of this colour in, make a hybrid. That was almost we could make a string of colour in this. A string of colour is where you go from light into slightly darker or stronger colour, higher chroma. Let's just add a bit of this grey, and this again, this is the beauty of putting the greys out. If I wanted to reduce the chroma or saturation of a colour, and it's a complex colour, I mean these are complex, I've got all sorts of different colours in them, I don't want to think about it, I just want to reduce the chroma, add a grey. It's blue-esque, which is cool, add a cool grey, and immediately you'll desaturate whatever you've got in there. And if that's probably gone a bit lighter than I anticipated. So a quick look, yeah, that's a bit too light for my liking. So to darken that down without going a stronger colour, I'm going to add black. Now black is a colour which Rembrandt and a lot of artists of our Renaissance period used. If it's okay for Rembrandt, it's okay for me. I'm going to add a little bit of colour back because the black will kill the chroma. It'll make it colourless because black has no colour. Same as white. We don't want to go too. I'm going to add a little bit of blue as well. Maybe a tiny bit of that purple will help fix too. Again, maybe I should use the palette knife, but well, that's a bit strong for me on the blue front. Paint rubbish when I talk and talk rubbish when I paint, so here we go. The black again, killing some of the chroma and darkening down. That's quite a leap, so I want to be mindful of where I stick this. Let's have a quick look. Is that too much? I don't think so. And again, we've got a nice bit of underneath that. This is obviously going to be one of the highlights of the show. So underneath here, the base of a tree, so much light gets down there, so it's naturally darker. We can therefore put a bit of darkness in. We can change that and adjust it accordingly, should we need to. Okay, now I'm going to flick up a little bit here and there with this. It's going to merge in with the colour which we've already put on. In other words, it's going to lighten. It's going to get complicated, and that's a word I use a lot because initially this is a very simple block-in. We can complicate it later when we get the main colour groups in. Don't start putting in the pine needles on the tree. You don't need that yet, and certainly don't start putting in pine needles down here because you won't ever see them. But that's a complication which we can choose to do or not to do later on. Right now, all we need to do is keep it very simple, almost an abstract. And I'm just popping this darker value in, it's darker colour. Value as in tonal value. And here we go. For those of you who just joined, Rachel is going to be joining us at around about 6 o'clock-ish. She's currently driving my granddaughter back, or our granddaughter back, to the parents. So couldn't quite organise that this evening, so it all worked. But never mind. Now here you can see I just put a bit of dark in. So if you've got any questions, please write them down or put them on the text. Rachel will catch up when she's arrived, and we'll converse then. I can't actually, I don't know why, I've not managed to get the live chat organised on my systems. We're still in the process of learning how to do all of this stuff. Okay, so that's kind of maybe the way I see it at the present. Slightly darker shapes. We can just put a little bit more in here. Let's have a quick look. Again, don't go too detail in this, and I don't want to go too high, but let's just pop that in. Sometimes I get asked, do I go light into dark or dark into light? And truthful answer to that is it depends on how I feel. I think we're okay. This is the kind of background shape in many aspects to what is there but not there, if you know what I mean. There's nothing there currently, so okay. Probably goes against all ideas of how you should do a painting, just mess it up, but hey. I'm thinking of where else I can stick this colour. Let's try there. And here, the shadows, remember, are going to be cooler, so they're blue-esque. And the highlights are going to be warm. Going to be warm-esque. So the darkest dark next door to the lightest dark is really going to stand out in a big way. Let's pop this in as a dark. Already stands out a bit. And I might choose to make that even slightly darker when we get into the complication stage. If some of you feel I oversimplify, I do, and I do that totally deliberately, because if you're starting out painting, or you're experiencing something new, or experimenting with something new or in art, one thing you really don't want to do is to get complicated. Simplify it, get a result, and then build upon that result and complicate it. And I certainly don't want to get complicated with you this evening. It's not about me, it's about teaching you how. And giving you a comfort which you can then go away and paint along with me, or paint and rerun the stream anytime you wish. Some of you would be pleased to know we've managed to complete I think I'm just about to start project number 3 on the online school, so we're getting there. The project 2 is at the videography, well, post-production stage, which we got someone doing that, which is rather nice. Which is a brilliant young person who produces cut videos faster than I can paint. So you can see I've just kind of got a dark mass there currently, which I'll bring some of these shapes. I want to complicate this a little bit. Oh, there's a word, but not too much. And whatever you do, be mindful. Don't do anything too structured. You really don't want order. Disorder, yes, but not order. You don't want it looking like some kind of pretty picket line fence where everything is perfectly placed, and we have very tidy brains. So I think that brush goes down there. That's the dark brush. We'll come back to that in a second. And this is the light brush. So initially, let's have a quick look at this. We've got Naples yellow, and this is a kind of a mix of, let's pop this down here. Now if I put this straight in and put it over here, these are going to go whoosh straight in her face, and it's going to look unattractive. So we want it to be lighter, but we don't want it to be that lighter, let's try with this and see where we go, and you'll see what I mean. Now I'm going to put this in and try and keep these trees relatively low initially. There you go, that's a tree. Let's do another one. Now the light's coming this way, so the brush angle is here. If a light was coming this way, then the light and the brush angle would be going down here. So again, I don't have to do pine needles, but it's nice to get the shapes of the branches going in the right direction. And that's as technical as I kind of want to get really at this stage. I don't want anything to, there you go. And it's been first layer, and I'll probably end up with another layer on top of this at least. So I don't like to give my paintings just one bite of the oil colour. I like to give them a few. So I think it's 2 layers of paint, possibly a third, if I feel it needs in some areas, but I don't want to go, certainly don't want to try and get away with just one layer. You don't need to do that. I'm going to tone this down slightly and just come back into a bit more. It's amazing. You've got to do this couple of blobs, and it looks like, I was going to say it begins to look like Christmas. Begins to look like a tree, but you don't need to go too far. I mean, this is, firstly, the wind's blowing, it's probably snow is in the air, it's freezing, your eyes are watering. All you can think about is what's at the end here at home, if that's home. So you don't want to be putting in anything other than some looseness. This is a tiny bit more. And that's about it, really. We're almost done for this stage. I don't feel as though I don't think, whoops, sorry, I just touched the mic, deafening everybody. That looked a bit weird, so we want to do that again. I'll call the brush. Looked a bit too like a tree, and I didn't want that to happen. Right, so I'm going to get this dark brush again. I'm going to cut into that a little because it just looked a bit, I saw a bit of a twee shape there. Twee? Happy, too happy a shape. I don't want anything too constructed, precise. Maybe when you're trying to think of the right word, none actually come. I think we're getting there with this. Okay, so it's all very distant, sort of murky stuff currently. It's only getting really exciting when we get down into this area. So we'll get there. Let's have a quick look at that. Okay, so now let's tune into this, and I'm going to do very similar. Add a bit more. These line of trees I feel are nearer, and I mean, they're not on your doorstep, but they feel nearer, so we can afford to tickle up a bit. Again, don't be tempted by the dark side and go too detailed. Push some of that colour down. something's a bit too detailed and just stroke it over. These look like they could well be in shadow, so we don't want to make them too obvious. And I want this dark anyway, so I want to just have some tree-esque shapes in the background. Yeah, that's coming. I'm looking at the screen, by the way, because for me to see this, I'd have to walk all the way back, and so I'm using the computer screen with the image on it to get an overview as to how it's beginning to look. Notice how these, this is from the Impromentura, they look lighter and they look nearer, so that's going to change in a minute. Let's get a bit more solvent on this paint. You can see it's very thin, and there's a good reason for that, because it's going to dry really quick because the solvent does that. And it also means that that means I can change it very quick. I don't have to worry too much about it taking drying. It'll be dry very, very swiftly. It's very tempted to go all the way up here with the tree, but you do that and it's going to be they're going to be sequoias 3/4 of a mile high. I don't want that. These are very typical redwoods, firs, so they're not going to be the height of a sequoia. If any of you are fortunate enough to live near a sequoia forest, oh yeah, my heart goes out to you. I had a beautiful experience with my oldest son and his wife, his fiance then, his wife now, in California, and they are unbelievable. You realise just how insignificant you are when you see a sequoia which is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old, if not thousands. Yeah, that's beginning to. This is all background stuff. This is the main actor. Actually, maybe we really think the main actor. Last week on the Impromentura, someone suggests we needed a snowman, so he's become the leading actor or actress now, hasn't he? So it's all about the snowman. But nonetheless, this and this and this, these three items are the main story, and this path is it's combines it all together. I was thinking about this was going to be a stream, but it kind of looks like it's going uphill, so path is what it's going to turn out to be. All of this is supporting. It's just the atmospheric for this and this and this. That's the story. So it doesn't need to be too much. And the more we make it about this area, the more distracting it's going to be. And the painting itself will, I think, suffer. So I'm just going to push this in, and then we can get cracking on something else. A bit of light in here. Notice they really don't, they look like trees from a distance, but they certainly don't look like trees if you look at them up close. Just a shape. Just popping that in as a Okay, so now let's get this dark shape and see if we can define some of this. Just a little touch here and there. Get a bit more of the Naples yellow, I think, in a sec. Just realised I'm not wearing my rubber gloves. Just notice her looking at me, waving. I tend to prefer to wear rubber gloves when I'm painting because of the toxicity of some of the paints, but I'm quite a clean artist when I'm painting, so not too bad. Just going light and dark on a few shapes. I want it to be, like I said, sort of slightly random. I don't want everything to look the same. All I want at this stage is something which looks tree-esque. I'm going to put some of this down here like it's going off into the distance. So a little bit more. Hints at stuff. Okay, just softening some of that in. Good. So let's look at these trees over here. But first, before we do that, I kind of feel there's something going in the background just over there. So I'm going to leave these two brushes there for the tree. These I'm going to start with mixing up. I think this is nice. It's hitting the light. So let's have a look at creating some of that. Now, I mentioned earlier, but I've mixed up some light. So not white, but light. And I kind of like that. I'm easily pleased, by the way. Notice I'm holding the brush, it's upside down. So don't put too much paint on. And again, I've got a little bit of solvent mixed in with this. Just want to test this out and see if that works. Yeah, kind of it throws it forward. Too sharp an edge, but now if that's there, stands to reason some of these might have. We could just experiment with this a second. A hint of some lighter stuff on there. And you see that really brings them forward. So I don't want to go too woolly on this, and I'll probably push some of this back a little bit in a second. It's just to give it a little bit of life, but not too much. And the reason I don't want to go too much is because, like I said earlier, it's the atmospherics. It's a bit of a raised area there, so like a little bit too light for me there, but we'll start with that and we'll work down. Bring this down here. Okay. Now, that brings me to this area, because these trees are currently floating and we don't want them to float, but I do want them to not be too far forward. So I'm making sure there's a bit of paint there, which there is, a bit of dark, and I'm just going to rub in some light into that. You can see it's a little bit darker already, and I'm going to take that, this is the lighter tree colour, and I'm going to just pop that in and just shade that down a little bit. I don't want it to be too, right up there. Too far forward, in other words. Okay. I'm going to go a bit darker. Needs to be, needs to be a little bit subtler than that. That's better. So we can see it, but we can't see it very well. Hint at some of the bits which might catch the sunlight. Nothing too much. Nothing too much at all. I normally find if I fiddle too much, and then I've got to take it out. So we don't want to be doing that. I'm going to join this up with those trees. Bit of colour. Yeah, okay. Now, the dark colour, that's my medium colour. Excellent. Never mix your brushes up. So the darker colour now into this area, and I want to mess that up a little bit to create a soft transition. Good, done that, excellent. And a little bit of the light snow colour, and here we're going to pick out some detail on those trees. Gosh, I said detail again. It's because it's nearly Christmas. I often try to, when I do these demos and I paint, I'm very mindful of trying to be true to myself as an artist, and also true to you guys as a tutor. But because sometimes you go down a rabbit hole and you think, I'm here. It's not necessarily where you want to be. So sometimes you've got to make adjustments. Now, if it's me painting, no big deal. For example, we only know of the Da Vinci's, which Da Vinci didn't throw away. I'm sure there was quite a few paintings he thought, nah, that's destined for somewhere else other than the gallery down the road. So, but I do try to paint true as I really feel this needs to be, as opposed to painting what just to get by, if you know what I mean. So I'm fully capable and mindful of actually making some big decisions, like just wiping it, starting again, because that's a good mental attitude I think you need. If you make it your precious, then you get stressed. I'll touch the mic again. You get stressed out, and you don't enjoy the experience, and that's not nice. You've got to enjoy what you do. Otherwise, no one else will. Why should somebody else like your stuff if you yourself don't like it? Part of my head just kind of visualised some of you going, uh-huh. But I think it's true. It's very, we all have to a certain degree, a destructive quality with the way we think. Like, you know, I can't do this, I'm rubbish, blah, 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 blah. And we need to be mindful of those words and just put a different record on, or just change the tune, as they say, of that inner voice. Okay, well, this is just building, but I'm just putting some lights in. I'm going to come this end. I think that was Rachel just coming back in. Excellent, if it is. And we can start to converse and answer some of your queries and questions. Yeah. So this is really just shapes and dots and dollops and light and dark, keeping it really very, very simple. Not going to anything at this point in time. I don't want to commit to anything. It'll evolve. Can't remember the exact words, but not only, I think Rodin and also Michelangelo used to turn around and say they release the figure from within the stone. It's already there. They just got to find it. That's a particularly lovely way of looking at something. The painting's already done. All we got to do is just get there. So don't worry too much. Have a bit of fun. Yeah. Okay, so those are rough shapes, and I just want to make sure that the paint is on the canvas and I haven't missed any. It's nothing worse than suddenly realizing you've got a big patch of nothing. Okay, so we've got that in there. Now let's come back in and put a bit of darkness in some of these. Again, popping the dark to the left hand side. Yes, that's left. Putting some shadow underneath that. It's construct at this stage really, it's just see where these main shapes are. Shadows to the left, remember, don't get confused over that one. That's it. So in so doing this, we're automatically complicating everything in this area. That's it. Now, I think we're ready for putting a bit of that highlight colour in, but I don't want to go too much with this. So I think initially we'll use this and we'll use a slightly lighter grey and put a bit of warmth into that. A bit more grey. Bit of solvent. Not too much, he says. Putting too much in. And let's just see what this looks like now. So start off down here. That's too light. So immediately put some dark in. If it's too light, it's going to throw it too far forward as a bulk. Oh, here's Rachel. I think. Yep. So we are now a team. Rachel says hello and waves. Pushing that down. I couldn't get eyes on the feed, so no idea if everything's okay. So if I could be actually a blank screen, but hopefully not. Okay, so popping a bit of that in. I'm trying to keep the shadows to the left and highlights to the right. Ah, good. And not to get to anything at all at this stage. You won't be able to see anything anyway. Do you remember, it's cold, you're freezing, your eyes are watering, and it's blowing, so you're not going to see anything really. Right. So I'm going to put those brushes down, and I'm just going to get a brush which I'm tempted to use this one, which is it's a blender. I don't want to blend, I just want to soften some of this in. So I'm just going to do that. So I'm going to push it back a bit. So I'm not wiggling, I'm just touching it. Hopefully not too much. He says, I'll just have to put them in again. Rachel's typing away in the background, so hopefully your messages and questions are being answered. Yeah, okay. Whatever I do here, I can change, alter, play with, highlight, bring forward, take back. Doesn't really make much difference. I just didn't want it to be too in our faces at this point in time. Which I think is quite important. Okay. Right, I think that's about it. Let's have a quick tickle on this side. I don't want too much going on. Like I said, I can get very complicated later further down the road, and we can start putting robins and squirrels and all sorts of things in, but not now. Main focus on here is also proportion. Make sure that we don't make these trees too large, too small. It's got to fit in the scheme of things. Now, do you remember I said to you about this area up the top there? I just wanted to take some of those marks away, brush marks away. Well, this is a 1-inch soft blender, and I'm just going to dance over this area, not picking up a huge amount of anything except a hair. Love it when you get a hair on there. Let's get that off. And you probably can't see, I don't know if you can see or not, there's brush marks on there. I just want to, at this stage, just take them off. I don't want to, like I said, commit to anything at this point. First layers of colour going in is all I really need. And it's very low chroma. This is a kind of an evening, stormy, snowy, misty thing. So it's not going to be like bright, riotous oranges and reds going on. Now this, we can see a line. Can you see this line? I'm going to take that ever so slightly out. So it's there, but not there. Pushing it further back. An edge you can't see is called a disappearing edge, or a disappeared edge. And an edge you can just about see is a reappearing edge, or discovered edge. In other words, lost edge. So I don't want to do that with that brush. There's that other little one gone. There you are. So here, likewise, I don't want to see a sharp edge. We've got this soft tree line, and if I just delicately lost the edge, pushes it further back. I'll do this and then I'll show you the difference, because it's quite stark.
Your sky is a lot darker than it shows on the screen.
That's because the light's an angle. I'm looking at the screen, so I'm aware of that. But yes, Rachel's just said my sky on the easel is a lot darker than it is on the computer screen, but it's just the studio lights creating that illusion. So can you see we've got a sharp edge here and a smoothed out blurry edge there, and this is too sharp, it's bringing it too far forward. So because of the distance, and it's windy and it's blowing and it's snow dust all over the place, that's not going to be there. So we'll take that out. Just hint at it. Oopsie. Take the tree out. Again, along here, just softening it. So there's two ways of softening an edge. One is if you have we'll start with a simple, which is light and dark. So you've got light, as we have here, and a dark top. Well, you just get a bit of medium, halfway house, and you put it between the two. And maybe you need, so it gives you a light and a dark and a medium, and you might need a medium light to blend that in and a medium dark to do that in. So you can blend with paint, which is more accurate. But for something like this, it's so in a distance. You can, if you're careful, you can create exactly the same, or similar effect, I should say, by just softening. Now, the drawback is the contamination. With this method, you're very likely to be contaminating the light and dark.
We have a question from Richard.
Yeah, hi Rich.
At which point will you use the brightest white highlight,
Ooh.
or will you keep away from pure white?
Good question.
Like pure black, will pure white kill the picture, or just use an off-white as the brightest white?
Right, so, and if you heard, I'll repeat the question. Richard, who's viewing, just turned around and said, what point basically would I use titanium white or ivory black on this? Very sparingly, possibly right at the end, if I wanted to make something glisten or really contrast and stand out. I'm almost tempted to say never. It's that slight. I think when you use white and black, you tend to take a lot of the. It's very easy to take the life and soul out of a painting. This colour here might appear white, but it's actually quite warm. It's a light pink. So, and likewise, this might appear black, but it's actually a very dark blue grey. So I think the best way to answer that question is to talk just very briefly about setting out your contrast layers. Sorry, let's just clear the voice. So if you set your light as light, but not white, and you set your dark as dark, but not black, and you have a full range of values between the lightest light and the darkest dark, that is your contrast range between your light and your dark. Paint the whole picture with that. And then right at the end, if you have to lift something up, like a really bright glistening something on certain aspects of the snowman or parts of this tree or something in here, just to make it come alive, or you wanted to add an extra frosting on this edge, which is the nearest snowfield, then that's the time to use it, right at the end. There's no such tube as whiter than white. So once you've used your white, that's it. The only way to create extra depth is to darken everything down. So it's like, no, don't go there. That's why the only time I've used white is to mix a colour, not to put onto the painting. It's a really good question, and it's sadly more of a complex answer. But I think that's where we are with it. So extremely sparingly, if at all, and really not very much. So let's just get in on, like I've just done on the other one, just going to soften that edge a little. Okay, so that's kind of where we are with that one. Good. I'm going to just take a brush and just wanted to soften an edge, so what I do is I put a bit of light on there. Okay. So all of these trees here, it's like it's where I might tickle them a bit further, but not now. Let's move on to other stuff. So we have a beginnings of some field here. Let's put that brush down before I use it again. And I'm going to just come into this and lighten it up slightly. And sure enough, that's a bit too dark there, but never mind. That's enough. Now, if I light this end, this wood is going to cause a shadow. So we can bring this up. And I'm going to add a little bit of blue to this, blue-esque, maybe a bit of purple. But again, keeping a mindful eye on the chroma. I don't want this to end up being a purpley and blue at that distance. It's more like it's almost like a nothing shadow. I'm going to leave a little bit of light in the corner. The tree line, not the corner. Push that a little bit over there. Excellent. So that's effectively the bit of shadow from those trees. And then we'll just soften that in. some highlight coming down here, I think. And there's a, pretend there's a bank there which is creating a bit more shadow. And again, lifting this up a little bit. But then I just want to push that down a tad. So again, this brush, touching on the edges. I don't want anything sharp at this point. It's very, very loose, non-sharpened edges. It's almost hinting at that detail, but not detail at all itself. Again, just take that away a little bit. If it's, I can bring the sky down. I think that's enough. We don't want to mess too much with that. Okay, let's look now and see where we should go next. I still feel maybe a little bit more in here as far as a highlight is concerned, and I use the word gingerly, so a bit of warmth. Let's get the right colour. It's too bright, I think, so let's bring this down into a grey. So I'm looking at a warm grey, warm as in like colour, on this premix. See what this looks like. I think it might just be a bit too much. Yeah, we should be all right. Again, I can just touch that in if it needs to. So a bit of shape of some snow-covered branches, but nothing else. Maybe I should use a smaller. I like using a bigger brush because it stops me going to into detail, but I just bring that down slightly. Okay, and again, try really hard not to make that mistake of putting everything in a spot. Neat and tidy forest. Right, so very carefully now, I'm just going to touch that just to push it back slightly. I pushed it back too much before. And then we'll walk away from this and we'll leave it and get on with something else. On the painting. G'day.
That was helpful.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's I mean, if you really want to experience, have an experience of something like, which would be rather an interesting exercise, is to paint a white egg cup on a white saucer, and try and get the values in, the edge of the rim and the reflections, and then you'll begin to see it's tricky but nice, interesting exercise. Okay, I'm just mindful I'm getting too picky on this, so I'm going to walk now and leave that. Come back to it later when I get more into here take away that darkened edge a little bit. I just want to blend that down, bleed it down, I should say. Right, now, so the trees are in-ish. I think we should bring the this area down a little bit. So we've got a dark colour, but I'm going to use this for the dark. Let's have a look at that and see what that looks like. We need to have it slightly cooler. So I'm going to put a bit of that colour here. This is the cold grey, and I'm going to add a little bit of the violet to it. The problem with that is I don't want it to go too happy a high chroma colour, so let's add a little bit of the indigo to that colour. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, could probably go very slightly cooler, so a bit more blue. See, I put that one there. Have a look and see what we prefer. They're very similar on screen. Okay, so I'm going to mix up now with a palette knife. Where has it gone there? Some more of that sort of colour, enough, because obviously we got a fair bit of darks to stick in. So the cool white, or light, I should say grey even. It's difficult to get the tutors nowadays. And a bit of the blue, but not too much. Bit of blue, bit of indigo. More blue. The blue I'm using is French ultramarine. I should introduce the colours again at this point. So let's put some of the Naples yellow out. So we've got titanium white, Naples yellow light, cadmium yellow deep, alizarin crimson, ultramarine violet, ultramarine blue, indigo and ivory black. And these are pre-mixed colours that I mix. These are cold greys, warm greys, light, medium, dark in both. This is a kind of a skyish colour, which I didn't end up using, but maybe will do soon. And this is our warm white. So this is to mix colours with, that is to paint onto the canvas. And let's just get this shadow colour of snow in. So it was a good idea to decide on the overall colour effect you want on your painting before painting it. Let's move this in. I can make it a bit darker on that. Let's go into there. A bit more indigo. If I go too dark, well, I'll just make it lighter, so no fear. That's too blue. Maybe a tad more blue. Hope you can all hear me clearly. My voice tends to go a bit silent sometimes when I'm thinking. So a bit more violet. Coming in slightly on the black to make it go darker. I'm mindful it's a bit light, which means obviously I've got to then go and add more pigment because the black will kill the chroma. A bit more violet. I think that's good to go. See what that looks like. So we'll put a bit on the brush, wiping the palette knife, bit of solvent, and we're away. So here, where the shadows, we're going to chase the shadows. Shadows are coming along here. Okay, notice how I'm holding the brush. It doesn't always have to be like this. Here. Kind of feel we could have a bit of light coming across there, peeping through. This is already quite light if you look at into those shadows of those trees. I'll tickle that in a little bit and diffuse it to make it so that we don't know where it starts, where it finishes. Very small amount of paint at this stage. I don't want to commit until I am sure of what I'm committing to. I'm going to pop in the light now, because this is going to dance across the painting. Light coming from here, hitting this. It might sort of hit about there as well. It's going to be affected by the shadows. I don't want to go bring that round. That's it. Okay. Kind of sometimes I use the term, it's nice to mess things up in the nicest possiblest way. Don't ever be worried about messing something up. Put a bit of shadow into this. I'm kind of using it as a sketching medium almost now. Just and let's just now pop a little bit of light into that area. Whoops! There you go. Look at that. You can tell it's maybe I can see it's really pink from here. So. This is dark because it's in shadow. You can see it's pushing down. Don't get too worried about, certainly don't start painting in footprints at this stage. Just get the bare bones in. Now I'm going to just tickle that in a little bit. There's a little bit wet in that zone. A little bit too much solvent. So we'll come back and we'll fiddle that in a second. Let's carry on putting some of these lights in. Yeah, I've got to keep mindful of not putting too much solvent in. I want a bit of light in here, like it's just hit an area with sunlight. Could even come up. And this is really about just having fun. Like a cloud, the highlight and shadows are on opposite sides.
Martin, just
Yeah.
very quickly,
Yeah.
give me a wave, because I'm just streaming you live on Instagram at the same time for a moment, and you've got some people following you.
Oh, hi guys. Good. Good evening to that one. So, being recorded on Instagram simultaneously as doing a stream. I'm not quite sure if that's a first, but it is for me. So I just want to complicate this up a little bit for want of a better word. Let's just push this over. This is the slightly darker colour. Now this here behind the tree is going to be in shadow, and we'll define the tree later. So let's just get this in as a value more than anything else. Underneath here, bit of solvent on that, I think, just a tiny amount. See, actually doing a Instagram video as well. Keeping those highlight shapes, and now I'm going to put some highlights around. Kind of feel this could do with being lighter, so we'll pop that in. A lot of this is feeling, and it can easily, we can easily change stuff. Right, now I want to get these rough shapes in, and then we can define them. If you think of the snow as kind of a seascape, you have rolling water, you've got rolling hills. There's some slight differences and changes, but fundamentally they are related, as indeed everything is a shape, a value, an edge. You can get the right shape and value, and let's add colour, shall we, as well. And that's the right edge, soft, hard, medium, blended. Well, it's going to look like a painting. There's very little difference between painting an apple, a pear, a cloud, a rock, an eye. It's all a shape, hard edge, soft edge, colour. Get them in the right place, and you'll end up with the right painting. And I really believe that. It's again, that sounds like an oversimplification, but I feel that's true. You can always complicate it afterwards. I always say this: if you believe you can't paint something, then don't. Just paint what you see. Don't give it a name. Paint the shape. You don't need to worry about anything else. That's it. So I'm just applying this light, because it's already it's got a value on it, grey, or so it's automatically toning itself down. So which is good. It's nice. That's what we wanted. Ooh, blank canvas. It's too light. Darken it down a bit in a sec. Good. Painting around the tree, not the tree. Okay, getting that. Kind of like this area, we need to make a real dark statement in there. So I'm going to get, but I'd like it to have a bit of colour, because it's literally on the doorstep. And so therefore I've pushed the ultramarine violet and also the indigo. Indigo? No, French ultramarine blue. A bit more. Tad of indigo to get that dark area in. I'm really just, to be honest, I'm just playing now. I'm fiddling with stuff and seeing what works and what doesn't. Some of these edges up here I'm going to make quite sharp, others loose. Bit of black, indigo and blue, making a black indigo blue with a bit of violet on there, I think, for good measure. Just in this area, I wanted shadow in here, trailing back. Yep. That's kind of nice because it's feels right. Yeah, okay. So tad more. Ooh, picked up the background colour. Okay. Again, that colour is going to be fairly dark underneath this part of the tree, and I want to get the just that in there, just real dark, because that's going to push the tree forward, which is really where I want it to go. Now, how dark is dark? Let's have a look at this. It's kind of too light, so we'll add some of the dark on top of that colour to push it. Now we're now mixing on the canvas, really. Okay. Pushing that value up slightly. Not too much, just enough. But on one side, this side, where it's catching the light, oh, whoopsie, that was a big dollop. Try not to do too many whoopsies if you can. They don't help. Okay. Softening the transition between there, so it creates a slight round, bit of dark, a bit blue background. It's going to really push that back with the indigo, I think. I just want to create an edge, and then we'll move forward. That's it. Yeah. Now, that was a real bit of a shock on that. Added quite a bit of light onto that side, and I wasn't expecting it. So, took all that in. These brush strokes are, can I say happy strokes? Slightly smiley face strokes. So slight curve to them. Not all, but those were. And it creates it's like an inverted wave, or what do I mean by that? Show you what I mean by that in a second. I'll show you now. Okay, so let's look at this a second. So here we have, let's say, a highlight. Let's put some light on. Yeah, that's pretty light. Actually, I'll push a bit down here too, I think. Okay, so there's some light. Now, if we get the shadow. Is that strong enough shadow? And we hold the brush like this for a second with the hairy bit down, and we create a sharp edge. There we go. And push it away. Now, let's keep that light edge, that sharp edge underneath. But the edge on top, just blend it away gently, carefully. Let's come and do that again. So take it away up. Add the highlight. So it goes from a dark base to a highlight. Soften that off. And we just complicate that up even further. So a bit more. Let's put another one in. There's the highlight with a sharp edge at the top. Keep that edge. Oops, a bit underneath, just soften slightly. And if you can darken that down a little bit just to emphasize it. You can see that's one good way of building up a snowfield now, or some interest and pattern. And just play with that as you do. Try and get some of these edges reasonably sharp. Now, I think Rachel's just said something to me and whispered in my ear that it's nearly 7 o'clock. Wow, doesn't time fly when you're enjoying yourself? We haven't got very far today with the, it would have been nice to put a bit more in here. So I'm going to carry on for another 5 minutes, I think, because we did start a little bit late. Because Rachel doesn't realise I had a slight malfunction on the beginning of the stream, so pop it a little bit into that, complicate that up a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to reinforce that up a tad. Things at a distance you are not going to see a great deal of anything, so no need to worry about putting detail in. Things like this you're going to see more because it's in your face really, it's really kind of up close and personal. Let's pop a little bit of, we got this wet, so I'm going to just pop a little bit of highlight on top of this reef. So that just pops in there. And here I'm going to dance this down. It's near foreground, so I've got paint on this bit here, the dark, so I just want to pop a bit of the light into that. and in here. Okay. That's brought that forward, which is, I think it's quite nice. We'll put a bit of shadow in. Not too much, but a little bit. Tiny bit more dark into that. So this really determines the strength of the painting. It's very, very low chroma so far. I'm going to really get into some warmth in here and build on that area. But it's cold. It's winter. It's snowy. There's no bright reds that we're going to be seeing in this high chroma colours. And if we did, it'd look really odd. Popping a bit of this darken shadow in underneath here, not too much. I'll pop it there. And again, this shadow line coming up. So this is how I would really sort of work this painting. I'd get the main color groups in, shapes, simple at first, working from top down. Don't go any detail in the distance, because the minute you do that, you will bite yourself, and you're then down a dark path. It's also putting the detail in and making it look like a photograph to the amateur artist. Don't go down that path. Keep it loose. Softening those up a little bit. Almost using this like a pencil. Just pop that back. And I just want to get some really nice bit of terps, I think. Tiny bit of highlight on this. Because this really is going to boost this forward, and it's warm, so it's going to bring it forward as well. Okay, so before we sign off for the evening, does anybody have any questions they'd like me to just explore with them? Hope you're enjoying these streams as much as we are doing them. Please do keep the comments coming in on on not only the streams but also the channel. And if you please do press that subscribe on the YouTube channel. It really does help our visibility. Okay, so let's continue with this on our next stream. The objective then is to get everything down here completely covered, and then we can start tickling in the what's that word, the detail. So hope you've enjoyed this evening's stream. I'm sorry about the initial it didn't quite go as smooth as we should have on there, but be safe, be well, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great week. Bye for now.